Hi, welcome to Sage Thyme. This is a safe space, a space where love is free to grow and growth with love is honored. Here we listen more deeply with compassion and care as our souls open up more wholly and fully within us to divine love and grace. Oh, thank you for being here. I'm Lillian, and we've got a reading here going today. Instead of specifying on the description tag what sign to focus on in your natal chart, I am going to let the reading be what it is, but I will roll a little bit of dice here that indicate areas in your chart, if you so choose to follow your chart, that you wish to focus on. So we've got the 5th house, Leo, and Neptune. Interesting. None that really well, 5th house could be random, but Neptune and Leo. Right now, Neptune is at 0 degrees of Aries, retrograde, about to enter back into her home sign of Pisces for a little bit. And Leo showing up in the chart, actually. First and foremost, let's get right to it. All right. The first 2 cards that came out on the draw are the King of Wands and the Ace of Wands. And let me bring these up here a little bit. These 2 cards are a nice inverse causality, so to speak, as well as a Kickstarter encouragement. So the King of Wands here is, in this deck specifically, I'm going to go a bit more with what the creator of this deck speaks of. But the King of Wands here is talking about that quiet strength, that quiet dignity. You see him here holding his wand, and he's got his little pest of a crow almost seemingly at his crown, which is lit up, and his crown actually has a crown of gold and rays around him. But the crow's pecking on his head almost obnoxiously. But the lion knows. He knows that it doesn't matter what limiting thoughts or feelings may be coming into his mind. He knows who he is. And he sits steady in that, and he does that straight eye to eye. I see you and I'm here. And I am present within my body because I know I deserve space in this world. And that space is within my body, and I hold it firm and powerful and strong because that's where I hold my consciousness. That's where I hold my attention and intention, which is the wand part of the king. That inspiration, that fiery Aries nature of the emperor where he's housed. He knows what's true of him because he has and continues to keep his presence, his awareness within himself. That is his priority. He knows that the external world, the more he prioritizes and strengthens and becomes skilled at keeping his his attention, his focus within his internal universe, the more he does that and is skilled at it, the more the external world becomes a projection of who he truly is. There's a real popular saying going on, that has been going on for a few years, that, what you see is a mirror of what's going on within you. And that's not necessarily true, especially not for people who are recovering from some sort of trauma or illness or loss or all the above. People who are having to re-strengthen and restructure their internal universe, their consciousness, and their presence within their body because their body is in so much pain. And during that time, people are highly susceptible to external projections. And it could be that many of you, I'm feeling, came into this world and inhabited and incarnated into a family that had lineage, ancestral patterns, and attachments of really harmful and harsh and limiting, and we won't go into all the things, but not awesome projections. And those projections will always find their way to what they would call the weakest link, which actually is the most sensitive individual. But because of that sensitivity, it starts to shake the consciousness at the core inside the body. And it becomes really difficult for the soul, the consciousness, to stay inside that body. So we begin the work. And usually, because we're young, when this starts, we have to go through a lot of things and still live through it and wonder, why are we still alive and how can we still do this, right? And then we realize, well, if I'm still here after all of this, there has got to be a way for me to thrive instead of simply surviving the thrashings of the waves, so to speak, of other people's emotions and, the hurricanes and tornadoes of other people's thoughts, not just at us on the surface, but incepting within us and trying to convince us that we're less than what we are. And this isn't a blame or a faulting on the other, but nor is it accepting that mirroring can kind of like, what is this saying? Like, oh, your life is what you created of it and it's your fault and your responsibility. And while yes, what is in our life is our responsibility, it is ours to develop the ability to respond to it. It's not necessarily our fault. There are individuals who move in that way and in that category, but they're usually the ones who are gaslighting others and saying, oh, they're victim shaming. And so I want there to be more clear distinction. Not everything in the world outside of certain individuals with certain designs of life paths, not everything is a mirror outside of them. They have to work to get back to that place where the goodness within them is showing up externally. And just because somebody's really good inside and loving and caring and compassionate, and the external is the opposite of that, doesn't mean that there's something nasty within them that's theirs. But it can mean that there's something nasty that got saturated within them, projected from others, that's living there simultaneously, like a parasitic host. And so when we're able to realize that's it, and we're able to find our way into self-strengthening, which is that bringing our consciousness and our awareness into our internal structure, creating it internally as we choose from who we know we always have been at a soul level, that innocent child level, in addition to in response to what we see in the external world that isn't okay, that isn't working, and not a response that does what usually they're doing, not a response that seeks revenge or hostility or oppression or punishment in the severity, none of those kinds of things. Yes, consequences can be really important. We know that. Anyone who has animals or children or employees or just exists in a world recognizes that balanced and properly calibrated consequences according to the individual are really great. But that's often not something we need to do. That we can give to Source. What is ours to do is focus on who we really are and to recognize when there are thoughts within us and feelings within us that we know aren't our own because we know the truth of who we are, to turn our attention inward and really cultivate that emperor strength, that emperor power, that look you straight in the eye. And I don't care if you're pecking me on the head, stinky toe. I had a different phrase that came to mind, so I used that one. I know who I am, and I'm strengthening it, and I'm bench pressing those internal energetic weights within me, and I am infusing myself with empowerment and light and truth and love, all of these things. And darkness, right? We need that. That's the love. And light is the truth. Light is information. Love comes from the darkness. And we're not talking about good and bad, that kind of thing. We're talking about the yin and yang of the universe, the polarities of exchange, where the yin and the yang, yin being darkness, yang being light, I just lost my thought, where them in and of themselves are wonderful and essential parts of the universe. It's when they get excessive or deficient that they start to pull on one another in a toxic way. So we're bringing that balance back. I am still on the first card, and I am just rolling. A lot of cards came out today, so I don't think I'll have to go through them all, or I will very quickly anyways, because I don't want to make this too long. Unless, well, it's maybe not up to me. So that's our King of Wands. And then right next to it being that Ace of Wands. That taking the wand within the hand, the paw of the lion, and saying, what is my inspiration? When I have this little tiny peak of a portal view at the tip of my wand, but I'm still kind of surrounded by darkness and uncertainty, and there are fireflies all surrounding me to remind me to connect with firefly medicine, connect with that internal glow, and glow up knowing that firefly medicine, the spirit of firefly, blah blah blah, will work with us. And all we need to do is connect with that and go within, knowing that our passion, that wand of inspiration, at the tip of it, it is leading us to the light. And we just keep following it with our hands. And we have a spider at the tip of that wand, telling us and reminding us that there needs to be patience in the weave. And there can be a torrent of wind or water or weather that occurs, and we don't have to take it personally, even if it's given from a place, from somebody else, that is a personal attack or whatever. We don't have to take it personally, because we know when we step back far enough, we know that this is part of the structure of us strengthening and developing our soul, is to have these antitheses, these counter maneuvers. So getting that emotional how could yous out of the way of it allows that objectivity to remain as the predominant when we're in especially those darker times, or all the time. These are characters playing character roles until they're fully awake, and then they can start really taking action. And that's not up to us. Us is up to our own selves, right? Being awake and alert and continuing that awakening process, because it's an ever unfurling development. I've got my little lioness hair everywhere. So yeah, Leo, passion. And then the next two cards that wanted to come out underneath that side by side are the Nine of Swords and the Death card. And I love this. I love this for you so much, right? The Nine of Swords again talks about those worries. And it's not that they're unfound worries. They could be based on factual circumstances, but they're really more projected into the future worries versus let's be in the now and work with what we've got. And I love that the creator, who also wrote her own descriptions, included with the idea of the Nine of Swords, the polar bear. And she was discussing, she's a Seattle resident, she was discussing how as a mother, the mama bear, right, there are, or a father even, there are times where with our children, when things are going nuts in the outside world, we can start worrying a bit too much and future casting that worry, because we have somebody that we really are taking care of and whose lives depend on us. And whether that's someone in your own life or it's you within you, and maybe you've reached a point in time in your life, or you're simply in a time in your life where cultivating the strength and wholeness and health of that inner child within you, the divine spark of innocence, the seed of your soul within you. And that is your protective role. But it's important to remember that the worry is the worry. And if we stay within and we stay present in more that emperor place of both stoicism externally by observation of anyone watching us, but internally is that mama bear who's got her baby curled up in her embrace. And a really wonderful note that I read about the polar bear is that the fur itself isn't white, it's iridescent. So the sun, the light, reflects off of it. But the polar bear's skin is black, so that the sun, the light, the yang, is absorbed. And there again, the yin and the yang working together. And I love it, it's beautiful. And having the death card come out next to that Nine of Swords is talking about, you can see there's some rats down here with the owl flying above with the fish. And here really it's talking about the imprisonment that we can create or simply occurs because of a need of protection. So it happened for a right reason. It was the design. And then at some point it becomes too confining, like the goldfish in the fish bowl that outgrows its tank, outgrows its bowl. And so this is talking about it's time to allow yourself to become free of and liberate from the confines of the safety that once served you really, really well. But now we're asking you to come forward in your emperor stance, in that stoicism meets internal, maternal, external, like Saturn and Cancer, which comes up again next in the next cards. Saturn in the house of Cancer is what I'm thinking of. That, and it's almost kind of the inverse of that external. So maybe it would be the moon in Capricorn. I don't know. I'm kind of on a tangent right now. I'm very excited about this reading. Let's just bring it back in. I'm going to take a sip. And this is part of it too. Janmacha tea. I love it. The energy right now with the full moon in Aries happening tonight, Pacific Standard Time, is very energized right now. And it can feel very prickly and angry or irritated. But what it really is creative. And so bringing these dualities of high octave energy, fiery energy, with that cool, calming patience of the spider, of the light and the dark, of the presence of the lion in that quiet dignity. Allowing yourself to move when inspired to move, and then if and when the energies get a little too kicked up and you feel yourself getting like zing or losing concentration, losing focus, or simply feeling it in your body, maybe things like getting a little agitated could happen too. That's another moon in Aries sort of situation. Slowing it down, remembering everything is already in divine design. And when we allow ourselves to place that capital T level trust in that divine design, we're able to sit back within the throne of our spine, and our consciousness ignites within us and becomes the viewing mechanism of how we perceive the world, rather than our mind, our brain, you know, using our sight to say it's this and this. We're allowing our soul to take over by bringing our consciousness and resting on the soul's throne within us. And that segues perfectly to the next card, which is the Six of Swords, coming alongside the Ace of Cups. And the Six of Swords was a beautiful presentation to me. I was asking a question about Saturn in Cancer, as I mentioned earlier. And a few days ago, I was brought an image of a tortoise, a turtle in the ocean, Cancer being the ocean, and the tortoise being Saturn when Saturn exists in Cancer. And this card came up, and I thought, how perfect, especially with the Six of Swords. You can see him. He's not totally cush like in Finding Nemo, but he is also riding the currents for thousands and thousands of miles. But he knows he needs his protective shell, and he knows he needs to use his fins to help navigate and stay on course, because there are rocks and jagged edges in a coral reef below him. And if he totally zones out and blisses out on the currents and the waves of the beautiful embrace of the Cancerian waters, he could get spun around and get thrown down along those coral reefs and get really banged up. So this is that representation of, yeah, go with the flow and stay alert, stay present, use your fins to keep you in the current, to keep you in the song of divine's design for you. It is a song. It is a geometrical design. It is all the things that have shape and fluidity together. And this brings in that Ace of Cups that came right next to it. That reminder that you are held in a full embrace. You can see those white feathers around the bottom of it, and the heron up at the top, and the lotus flower in the cup, presenting the reminders all of patience. And this particular heron, I forget the name of it right now, it's a local breed of heron, is very good at being both social and recluse, and knows when to retreat into its own space for solitude and peace within that solitude, which is what he's doing, standing on his overflowing cup, blooming the lotus flower surrounded by angel feathers. And he's in that peaceful overflow, and he's got this overflow of abundant peace, right? That's the core of what we want to really, I keep saying cultivate, and now I'm hearing culminate. I'm not sure I exactly know what that means in distinction. We want to culminate. I'll have to look up the distinction between cultivate and culminate. I know what cultivate means. A culmination. Okay. So it's a bringing together and of different components that are, again, making and creating that Ace of Cups peace that overfloweth with peace. And that's what we're doing. And we're allowing even the awareness of the jagged edges of other people's thoughts and feelings, whether heard and seen externally through their behaviors and words, or psychically and empathically received, or all the above. We're allowing those to pass through us and pass by us. And it's able to, because our cup is just flowing with that beautiful, clear, clean zen of waters. Waters that can get murky, but it's flowing. It's in motion. So it's filtering and moving. And we're, you know, the sediment moves out, and we bring in more clarity and more cleanliness. And doing things in our own personal day-to-day environment, like having a clean house, having clean hygiene, externally, yes, and internally, making sure that our immune systems are strong and our guts are cleaned of parasites, our systems are cleaned of parasites. Of course, if we are somebody or somebody else has parasites, parasites by nature are going to seek somebody else, something else to take from. And without reciprocity, parasites by nature do not reciprocate. They take and take and take until they're done. And they can go for a long time. So having that cleanliness is something that's definitely coming up in all senses. And of course, pardon me for the reach, internally and out externally. So if we are seeing things like, you know, I'll get certain signs, the little fruit flies, gnats, they'll kick up, or black flies, or even fleas will kick up on the pets when we're in a season or just about to enter a season of external psychic attacks, so to speak, whether the individuals are aware of it or not, through gossiping and just thinking ill, projecting a idea of who I am, for instance, or, you know, I know you can relate to this, onto me. And so I'll see it in my home and I'll really kick up my efforts, not just in the home and with the pets and everything to keep them clean, also internally, and using natural and well sustained and sourced resources to do that, cleaning with natural products and clearing my internal system and boosting it with products, you know, a great anti-parasitic, for instance. And it does it work for fleas? I don't know. But thyme essential oil from a very good quality company. Make sure you use a good quality company, and you research and know. I won't. Anyway, so thyme essential oil, as well as essential oil from red cedar trees. Amazing way of simply keeping the body clean and clear and able to function. And it's not just the molecular constituents that are working within us. It's also way, way more enhanced when we connect with the spirit of the medicine. I mean, red cedar trees, we know Western red cedars are powerfully strong, huge, tall, just incredibly resilient. And the smell that they give out is both uplifting and will raise a person's vibration and thoughts and emotions. It also is an excellent repellent to little predators like ants and so forth, and other little critter bugs that would destroy a red cedar tree. So the next two cards that came out are the Nine of Wands and the Moon. And again, I mean, we're seeing this pattern. The first two cards were really encouraging as a reverse causality. This is both the effect, but it's also at the front of what we're up to. We can work with this right now, and it's where we're going to be getting to on the other side of this full moon, and further and further as we work with it. So here, the Nine of Wands and the Moon, both carrying some challenging reminders of what to be aware of in this particular deck. And the Nine of Wands wants to speak again of those boundaries. Let's get this focused here. And I hear the garbage truck outside right now, banging around and that's it. The porcupine, you know, when things are getting a little too intense and a little too on fire, maybe she's noticing she's moving a little too quickly, which may not be quickly in contrast to what society expects. But you know what? The porcupine grooves to her own beat. You know, he knows what is right for him and what's not. And when somebody tries to come and impede on his business and tell him, like the fox, move swift, move fast, be slick, be this, be that. And Porcupine's, no, man, that's not me, and that's not me right now. He gets a little prickly. She throws out her quills and says, this is my boundary. And if I have to, I will poke you with it, and I'll poke you good. And then they go about their way. Just with that little hobble dobble and mannerism of, these cards don't pick up so well. My face is all flesh. I think there's just a lot of energy. The porcupine, one of the sweetest creatures out there. And yet, she gets to be sweet because she knows how to protect herself and when to protect herself. And she says, my boundaries are my own. And I don't have to be prickly. I can give you a heads up, like, hey, we can do this with compassion. But if the other person, the fox, isn't able to or willing to listen to that, it's that, I heard a phrase recently. I don't think I had ever heard it before, but you know, you don't cast pearls to pigs or something like that. Might be saying it wrong. But yeah, you don't, there's no sense in trying to convince or help somebody that's not ready or willing and wanting to do the work, right? And that's when the quills come up. And it doesn't need to come up from a place of resentment and attachment to that resentment or bitterness or taking it personally. It's just no, no, and no. And there you go. And then the moon. Here we have a coyote working with what he's got. You know, and we've got our full moon tonight. And this is a bit what it is. This coyote's set in the stage of a Seattle backdrop, having to move his wilding into the urban life. Not ideal, but I don't think he's stressed out either. He's finding a way, you know. He's tipping over garbages, and there's all kinds of negligences on the human side that he's able to make work with and serve him, feed him, sustain him. And so he makes play with it. And he's not denying the truth of what's going on. He watches out for garbage. He watches out for things that would cause him harm and cut up his paws and so forth. So he's practical, but he's also playful. And he's the trickster, remember? Coyote is the divine trickster. So he knows that whatever divine detour or challenging circumstance presents itself his way, he knows that's all part of the design. So he might as well lean back into that, trust the design, and have a little fun. Play with it, right? And then we've got, in reverse, the Hermit and the Fool. Two cards that have a depiction that we're going to go with the creator's depiction, not how I normally regard, especially the Fool card. But in this card here, the Hermit is again creating a bit of a nest, and you can see that harvest moon there in the corner. Let's go so you can look at it upright. Honestly, it doesn't matter. We'll stay reverse. Sorry if your head just went boink. But the spider knows that this webbing nest that he's creating for himself is temporary. And and because it's in reverse, he knows it's time now to come out of it. And so he's falling out of having it being inverted. He's falling out of his nest into the starry sky. He's coming out into the world. And here the Fool being in reverse. This Fool card does depict the idea of foolishness, foolish behavior. You can see the wolf stepping out onto potentially thin ice because he's chasing the white rabbit. So it being in reverse is really telling me that you know that there's a way and there's a timing and there are distractions, and you have developed the skills to be able to catch those distractions, those white rabbits, right? and not go down those rabbit holes. And you can see here the aurora borealis is behind the wolves, and one of them I think is probably howling at it. And you recognize that to slow down, not step out onto ice that could be thin ice, take a look around and say, hey, there's something that perhaps is a great deal more appealing that I could focus on. I'm going to work with that. And the aurora borealis can have the idea of being illusory, but it's not. It's real. There are scientific, chemical reactions going on with various components of the earth. And I can't even think now. I was going to sound smart here for a second because I used to know it, but now I don't. Because I'm channeling, and that's how that goes. But it isn't illusory. It's a very real thing. And it doesn't have to be followed and chased. It can be absorbed because it's at a particle and subparticle and light particle level, an electron level even, and that can all be absorbed. And so by having the Fool in reverse, that's talking again about pacing yourself with the ebb and flow of action and inspired action, as well as slowing down, making sure that you're in a pace of presence, and not in an extreme, but in a close proximity, a center of the balance. This is very Libra, which is where the sun is right now for tonight's full moon. And it's at 14 or 15 degrees out of the 30 degrees of each sign, each constellation. So it's right in the middle of the scales of Libra. How perfect is that? Not being at the polarities and being at the center of the justice of the scales. This is where Venus resides, and she can find, like, I want luxury and so forth, and she can swing from these polarities of having abundance to lack, of having, community and really loving connection, to being completely alone and isolated. But when she starts getting privy to what the design of this reality is, she realizes, oh, I'm playing the extremes. I'm going to go closer to the center. And I'm going to maintain this balance, knowing that the natural world around me still has cycles and still will play with extremes. But I can hold steady in the eye of a storm. And when things are at a calm, I can maintain my own presence and awareness, as well as to how much I'm consuming and overdoing, and not doing that, staying in that calm, centered balance. Okay, the reading definitely is cruising, isn't it? And so here, I thought these were the last two cards. They're almost the last two cards. Came out as kind of bringing it all together. Let's see if I can focus. We've got Moss Agate and Buds. And I love that Moss Agate came out especially. So Moss Agate speaks about positivity and change, which is what we're talking about, coming out of the hermit stage. And Buds, of course, then speaks about new beginnings and expansions, further confirming that. But Moss Agate, I picked it up, was it yesterday or this morning? I picked it up along with this other white stone. But here's the Moss Agate. It looks pretty simple and basic. And I picked it up because recently I was looking into the goddess, the triple goddess Danu of the Tuathà De Danann. And one of the things that really stood out for me was connecting, amongst all the things, but was connecting with Moss Agate. That was one of her stones of representation. And it makes sense. She is the triple goddess of water. She bridges the Fey world into the physical, mundane reality. And moss, that green Fey image, is such a perfect connection here, preserved in this beautiful white stone, just like the white feathers, reminding us of those peaceful, calm moments. and having it together with this other white stone, which I cannot remember what it's called. Maybe you know, and you can let me know. And then the buds, new beginnings. This is really what I'm hearing is coming out on the other side of this orb, 3-day orb of the full moon today at 15 degrees, 14 degrees of Aries, with the sun in Libra opposite. And then, because I think I would be remiss to not include, I had realized when I was shuffling and pulling cards that I got up and came back and I saw 2 of the cards had flown down underneath my feet, and they were upside down and they wanted to come through. And they're perfect for this reading. The first one being oak tree, which is power, courage, and strength. And the second one being lavender, tranquility, kindness, and self-care. I mean, guys, these aren't polarities. These are that center of the Libra scales, with the tree, the oak tree, deeply, deeply rooting. You know, they have that very strong, deep taproot that just goes to the center. And they represent such strength. Talk about kingly strength, right? That King of Wands, the Emperor kind of thing. Along with the cooling and calming and antiseptic properties of lavender. Lavender is popularly, of course, known for its calming effects for, you know, anxiety, stress. It helps people sleep, of course. It works really well for that. But it also has, it's in terms of like using it medicinally, the oils and the medicinal constituents within lavender, it's considered the Swiss Army knife of all the plants. It has one of the most powerful antiseptic properties. It's great for infections. I will use, again, a really great quality lavender extract essential oil on a child's bee sting that I know the child wouldn't have a reaction to lavender. And it just pulls that venom right out, or mosquito bites. It can work great on acne. I mean, it just sunburns, those kinds of things. So we're working with heat and poison, so to speak, to use a general term. And that can also then be translated internally if we're picking up on, or it's our own thoughts, but if we're picking up on external go, 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 you know, the rhythm of the fox, or, you know, jagged and unkind thoughts of other people's or our own towards ourselves, if that's the case. Lavender is that soothing balm that brings us back into that inner innocence, the inner child, and in a way of that polar bear embrace, the holding, soothing, protective strength that's calm and cool and clean and clear. So that's it, you guys. That was kind of like, it came through fast and with a, not a fury, but a fiery, swirly tapestry of artistic colors and fractaling designs on canvas. So that's our reading for today. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm very grateful that you're here. You bring so much to me by watching these videos and allowing them to serve you and develop your heart and soul of the matter of who you are, because you matter. Your thoughts, your peace, your love, your kindness that you feel for yourself and then overflows from you towards others, it matters, it materializes. And I want you to know that, because it is so important to me that you know that all of us know that, and we can do that and be that from the inside out. So be in love today. Be in love with you, and be in love with your connection with all things that love you back. The great oak, the lavender, the polar bear mama, the king of lions, stoic, quiet dignity, the flopsy daisy porcupine, the wily fox, and the ingenuitive and clever coyote. Be in love with all of it within you, because you are all of it and more. I love you so much. Take care.